In the previous video, we talked about the 4 different types of access modifiers, which are public, private, default, as well as protected. And we also discussed why we need to have all our data members or class variables as private by default. So a question arises that how can we actually modify the values of these private members outside the class? Or how can we actually retrieve the value? Because doing something like if you have a private variable name X, we cannot do something like object.x outside the class. So how do we get that value, or how do we actually set those values? For performing these operations, we have two different functions. One is called accessors and the other one is called mutators. Accessors are also called getters because they basically are methods that allow you to get the value of a particular variable, and mutators are also called setters because they allow you to set a value for a particular uh, data member or a particular instance variable. So let's see a quick example. We have the same example we had in the previous video, which is we have a class monster that has two different private variables. The first one is int level and the second one is string name. And now let's say if you want to manipulate these values from outside the class by having a concrete object, which is let's say if we had a monster Pikachu object, so we cannot do something like Pikachu.level equal to 10. You need to use something called accessors and mutators. And let's see one example of a mutator, which is a setter. So if in this case, if we want to create a setter or mutator for the level variable, you need to have this convention that all mutators should be public, which is you have public void set level. By convention, we use this set phrase for all mutators followed with the name of the variable. So in this case, we are setting the level of the actual level of the monster. So we have defined this as set level. And for all setters, we pass in a variable which is of the same type as the variable that we are trying to change the value of. So in this case, we are passing int new level. And what this function does is it changes the existing level to the new level. Similarly, by convention, a getter allows you to get a particular value of the current level. So just pause the video and think about what should be the return type of a getter variable. Would it be void uh, or would it be something else? So in this case, it would be exactly similar to the type of the variable, which is in this case we have a public int get level. It's pretty symmetrical to the set level, but it does not take in a value because we are just trying to access the value. We are not trying to manipulate something, so we do not have to pass any particular value in this get level. And in this case, we'll just return the value of the level variable. So in this way, like if we have a class outside, since these methods are public, we can still access or change the value of private variables. Another useful aspect of these getters and setters is that you can actually change the behavior of a particular variable. Like let's say if I'm creating an account class for a bank, like we have an account class. In that case, we just want a user to set to get or to view their balance, but they cannot manipulate it. So in that case, we can just get rid of this set level method, which is we do not want a user to set the value from outside the class. So in that case, they'll just have a getter or a read only kind of behavior. Here we are basically trying to create an object in another class for this particular variable and show you how the set level and get level can be accessed. So in this case, we create a new monster object which is called Pika. And now if you want to set the new level, in this case, we just ask the start level, which is we are printing the current level. So instead of pika.level, you have to use pika.getLevel to get the level. And now in the next statement, we are setting the level to 10. So after this, if we print the new level, that should actually print like you can again use pika.get level to get the new level, and this should now print the new level as 10. So this is one example. I'm going to show you one more example in the next slide, and then we are going to end this video. Now I'm going to show you a demo of how to create accessors for the other variable. So in the previous slide, we saw accessors and mutators for this level variable. So just pause for a moment and think about how you're going to create the accessors for the string variable. So in this case, the accessor for a string variable, which is accessors are getters, or they help us to get the value, you have to use the public keyword followed with, since we are getting a value, the method needs to return something. So in this case, the type would be string because we are creating the getter for the name variable, followed with a method name. So in this case, it would be get name, and then I'm going to pass what value? No value actually, because since we are just getting the value, and this method would return the name of the current object. Similarly, if we try to create a setter, we again use this public keyword followed with the string. Now actually we use just the void now because we are setting the value, we are not manipulating any value. We are not trying to retrieve a value in this case. So we call this as set name, and we pass in a string n into this method. And what we are trying to do is we are going to change the existing value, which is the name, to the new name that's passed into the setter. So in this case, let's try to run this and see how this works. So we have a new monster object that we designed in the previous one. Now we cannot access this name variable because these are now private. So how to access these is you have to use obj.getName to get the value of the name variable. So let's try to run this and see whether it prints our name, which is some monster right here, and it does, as you can see. Let's say if I change this get name to some other name, which is, we can use the obj.setter method or the mutator method to change the name from some monster to some change monster. Now if we try to print the name using the same statement earlier we had, let's try to do that. So now it should print the original name as some monster followed with the new name as some changed monster. This is one example. Another way, or IntelliJ actually provides you a quick way to actually define the accessors and mutators for a particular variable. And how you can do that is you can use the generate function or alt plus insert key to define just a setter, getter, or both for a particular variable. So let's say I've already defined it for name. I can just define the getter and setter using this functionality for this particular variable. Since I already have the getter and setter for the name one, it's not showing in the list. Otherwise, I could just highlight all of the variables and create getters and setters for each one of them. So in this case, I have now created a getter and setter for the level variable, which looks like this, which is defined by IntelliJ, but it should work absolutely correctly. And you can see it looks exactly like same, which is the get level returns the level and it's of type integer, while the set level returns sets the level of the current object. Don't worry about this convention. You'll understand it in the next lecture what this is, but basically it allows you to define your getter and setter in an automatic fashion.